Me and my shadow strolling down the avenue. Me and my shadow, not a soul to tell our troubles to. Alright, hello there, thrill seekers. That was, I'm not sure who originally did that song, Me and My Shadow from 1927, a little snippet of it. So, today's video is sort of related to that song, or that song is sort of related to the video. And what I'd like to talk to you about is a line from Shobogenzo Book 2, if you're looking at the Nishijima and Cross translation. It's in Book 1 of the Tanahashi translation. It's in the Hubert Nearman translation, which is available online. This Nishijima Cross translation is also available for free online if you want to look it up too. And if you go to hardcorezen.info, in the Lotso links section, there's a link to the free download of this, so you can look at it if you want. So the chapter I've been working on a book. Finally, I think moving forward on this new book that I've been trying to get moving for like a year or more, and not getting anywhere with it. So that's the trials and tribulations of being a writer. Anyway, the chapter I've been working on is concerned with this essay of Dogen's, Busho, the Buddha Nature, in well, I think pretty much everybody. I was going to say Nishijima and Cross titled it The Buddha Nature. I think almost every translation I've come across calls it Buddha Nature, or I think Hubert Nearman calls it On Buddha Nature, so it's pretty close. Anyway, Busho just means Buddha Nature. So this is a concept in Buddhism that usually is understood as every being, every living being, every sentient being sometimes has Buddha nature, which is often understood. Well, let's read Nishijima's, intro to it. Butsu means Buddha and Sho means nature, so Busho means Buddha nature. The Chinese characters read in Japanese as Busho represent the meaning of the Sanskrit word Buddhata, or Buddha nature. This was usually understood as the potential we have to attain the truth, or as something which we have inherently and which grows naturally day by day. But Master Dogen was not satisfied with such interpretations. In his view, the Buddha nature is neither a potential nor a natural attribute, but a state or condition of the body and mind at the present moment. Therefore, he saw Buddha nature neither as something that we might realize in the future, nor as something that we have inherently in our body and mind, etc., etc. He talks about we all have Buddha nature. Now, that isn't what I want to talk about, but I just thought I'd throw that out there so we have some background. What I want to talk about, and what I've been writing about for the past couple of days or week or so, I've been really working on this one line in there. And the line in the Nishijima Cross translation goes like this, and it shows up, if you're looking along, it's on page 2, so the second page of this essay on Buddha nature. It's also the second page of this book, has this line. The whole universe is utterly without objective molecules. Here and now there is no second person at all. That's the line. Now that little line, there's all these little lines that show up in Dogen that kind of planted themselves in my brain the first time I read them and kind of obsessed me for years. Like went, ugh, what the hell does that mean? What is that about? Because that's a weird thing today, to say, not today. Well, today it's a weird thing too, but to say. The whole universe is utterly without objective molecules. Here and now there is no second person at all. So, if you're reading that in an English translation of a book that's 800 years old, well, if I'm reading that, blah, 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 an English translation, blah, blah, the first thing I think is, okay, molecules. So something is going on with the translation there, because I know that 800 years ago, Japanese people did not have a concept of molecules as we know and love the concept of molecules, like I learned in 8th grade science or wherever I first learned the concept of molecules. So already I know there's something going on with the translation. So what's the deal there? So if I'm me, and I guess I am, or we could dispute that. Anyway, that's a little Zen for you. I go to the Japanese, not translation, the original Japanese version, which Nishijima Roshi helpfully put out in a kind of 12-volume series, which I have upstairs. And I dig around and I find the actual line in Japanese. And here's what it is, and I'll put it up on the screen. It is, Jinkai wa subete kakujin nashi. Choka sare ni dainijin arazu. That's what Dogen actually wrote. So I always make this joke because people, when I wrote Don't Be a Jerk, was like, what did Dogen really say? And I just threw it out there in Japanese because people ask that question, blithely without really thinking about, he didn't really say anything in English. He said something in Japanese, and you're always going to get it in translation. But that's what he said in Japanese. So that offending word molecules turns out to be not that big of a problem as I originally thought. It's the rest of it that gets a problem. Often that word jin, pronounced jin, is translated as dust. And it really is, it's a word that's still used from time to time. You still see it here and there in Japanese writings. And I think these days usually it just means dust. But in those days it kind of meant the tiniest possible particle of anything. So, and especially when Dogen is writing philosophically and kind of almost quasi-scientifically, if we want to get down to it in the way, because in those days the kind of differentiation between philosophy and science wasn't quite as clear as it is these days. So what he meant was probably something kind of like molecules. So that's why Nishijima and Cross chose to use the word molecules. If it were up to me translating it, I probably wouldn't have used the word molecules because of my own reaction to the use of the word molecules is to go, there wasn't such a concept back in those days, so I know something screwy is going on with the translation. I probably would have said particles, just to avoid people being, questioning that. What's really weird is the word that comes before it, kaku. Kaku actually generally means guest, okyakusama. That's the common word I know it from. Okyakusama is guest. If somebody's your guest, okyakusama irashaimase. You might hear that if you go into a Japanese restaurant, even outside of Japan. So it means guest, but it also means objective in the sense of the word kakanteki, which means objective as opposed to subjective. So that's why they chose to use objective molecules. A more sort of standard translation you might see, here's the Tanahashi translation. It goes, in the entire world, there is no extra speck of dust. Buddha nature is immediate and there is no second person, and then they add in parentheses, nothing outside. And Nishiyama and Stevens give you, the entire world is free of dust, and here there can be no second person. And Shasta Abbey, Hubert Neerman's translation is, the whole realm of one's being is completely devoid of any defilements, so they don't even deal with the word dust, they just make it defilements, coming from without. Moreover, in an instant, there is no second person. So everybody pretty much agrees with this, there is no second person business. But the other part is difficult. Now, I happen to, after puzzling over this for hours and hours and days, I have to come down to agreeing with the Nishijima and Cross translation of objective molecules, because extra, that word kaku doesn't mean extra. So Tanahashi translating it as extra is kind of extra. I mean, it's kind of stretching the meaning of kaku. I guess he's probably thinking of the meaning of it as meaning guest, to meaning guest being an extra person in the house or something like that, and maybe that's where he's getting extra. Defilements, I guess that's Hubert Nearman kind of thinking of a guest as a defilement, but again, it doesn't really mean defilement at all. And Nishiyama and Stevens just avoid the problem completely by saying free of dust, so they don't get this. And also this Jinkai, the first phrase in there, could mean whole world, but generally it's understood when Dogen says Jinkai, he doesn't mean just this planet Earth. He means the whole, the whole universe, not just... So when you say whole world in a kind of contemporary context, people tend to think you mean this planet Earth, but Jinkai has a kind of a wider meaning than the planet Earth. But okay, that's the niceties of language, and maybe that's interesting to you. It's interesting to me because I spent 11 years in Japan trying to learn Japanese, so I get really nerdy about this stuff. But what does this mean? I mean, let's just take it as a given that this is a decent enough translation. The whole universe is utterly without objective molecules. Here and now there is no second person at all. What the hell kind of thing is that to say, Dogen? And, okay, now this is what I was writing yesterday, and I think I might just tear it all out when I finally get the book finished, so maybe this is the only place it will live. What this made me think of was something that I came across in Philip K. Dick. But Philip K. Dick is a science fiction writer, was a science fiction writer. I think he died in 1982. And he wrote the book that became Blade Runner. It was called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And he wrote the short story that became Total Recall, and a lot of his stuff. The only book of his that was made into a movie during his lifetime was Blade Runner, and he died before the Blade Runner actually premiered. I guess he saw a rough cut of it, but he died before the movie actually came out. But then, since he's died, a lot of his books have been made into movies, so you may be familiar with some of the movies that have been made out of his books. He's a very surreal, weird, sort of philosophical science fiction writer, and I read a lot of his stuff when I was a teenager. I really, it was hard to find his books back then, and I spent a lot of time and effort trying to get hold of copies of his books, which were, I think, all except for the book that became Blade Runner, all of them were out of print. But I managed to find, I think, almost all of them before I was 18 years old, which, kudos to me, amazing. I'm still surprised I was able to do that. So he was highly influential. And he had this idea, and I wasn't able to find the reference, but I think the word he used was a cipher. I might be getting this wrong. But it was this idea, Philip K. Dick had had some weird sort of experiences in the year 1974 where he believed that he inhabited the consciousness of a first century Christian during the years of the Christian persecution, in Rome. So very weird experiences, and he also had some weird quasi-hallucinatory experiences and some deeply philosophical views that Philip K. Dick was a little bit crazy, So his philosophy always has to be taken with a grain of salt. But I also think he was kind of pointing in the right direction, but didn't quite get there. So I would caution anybody to kind of take Philip K. Dick's philosophy as sort of a basis for living, but I also think he was kind of pointing in the right direction, and maybe if he'd lived a few more decades, he might have gotten somewhere. So he would put these things in his book that I think the word he used was ciphers, where they would be sort of coded messages to people he thought would get it. And kinda, I think maybe Dogen did something like that too in his writings. Not in the sense of maybe like Philip K. Dick was doing, like trying to put little messages in there, but I think he put little phrases in there that he knew maybe most of his audience wouldn't get, but the people who had been practicing long enough and working long enough with the Zen way and had maybe deepened their practice enough, they would get it. And I think this is one of those lines, because when I first came across this line, let's read it again. The whole universe is utterly without objective molecules. Here and now there is no second person at all. I'm just like, what the hell does that mean? But I knew that it was something. I knew that it was something important. So years and decades roll by, and I have some experiences and some things happen, and Zen deepens for me, and blah, 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 blah. You know the drill. And now, when I read that line, I'm like, yeah, I know what he's talking about. I get what he is talking about. The problem is, and this is the reason I don't think it's a cipher in the sense of a secret message like Philip K. Dick talked about, I don't know a better way to put it than that. I don't feel like Dogen was being deliberately cryptic or deliberately secretive or deliberately trying to hide anything. I don't think he's ever doing that. I think he's saying things in as straightforward a manner as he can come up with. And this is what comes out. The whole universe is utterly without objective molecules. Here and now there is no second person at all. He's just laying it out for us exactly as it is, in as straight a manner as possible. I spent some time yesterday trying to put into words what I thought that meant. And let me just read to you what I wrote, and we'll see what it says. I haven't read it back myself yet, so we're both going to be surprised at what I wrote yesterday. Hubert Neerman's translation of Dogen's essay contains a footnote about that line regarding there being no second person. It says, "That is, upon one's spiritually awakening to Buddha nature, the distinction of self and other disappears." That's the footnote. Which is one way to put what I'm trying to say. But even though I wouldn't say Neerman is wrong, I also don't feel like he's quite right. It's not that the distinction between self and other disappears upon the occasion of spiritual awakening. Rather, one notices that the distinction was never real to begin with. Nothing changes other than your perception of the situation, but this changes everything. However, it doesn't last. The distinction between self and other reasserts itself rather quickly. However, twice I would fix that if I'm putting this out. However, once having noticed clearly that the distinction is false, it's impossible to ever fully accept it as real again. This doesn't grant you bliss and happiness for the rest of your life, but it does make life different. Dogen expresses this directly after the stuff about there being no second person, saying, "No person has ever recognized the direct cutting of the root, for when does the busy movement of karmic consciousness ever cease?" These are quotations from an old poem called Shodoka by Master Yoka Genkaku. Nishijima Roshi's teacher Kodo Sawaki published an extensive commentary on this poem. His commentary is available in English, translated by Tonen O'Connor, and entitled Commentary on the Song of Awakening, published in 2015 by Merwin Asia. It's worth reading, and I've talked about it on this channel before. He goes on to say, that is, Dogen goes on to say, that the entire universe has never been hidden. This is an old saying, well known in Buddhism, and it's an important one. Often these supposed great truths of life, the universe, and everything are presented as deep mysteries known only to special people or revealed only in deeply guarded secret rituals. But the Zen lineage holds no such secrets. Everything is out in the open. But, says Dogen, this doesn't mean that the substantial world is existence itself. What he means is that the material universe isn't the whole of reality. Elsewhere in Shobogenzo, in an essay called Inmo, the Ineffable, Dogen says, even the whole universe in 10 directions, in other words, in all directions, is just a small part of the supreme truth of Bodhi, the awakened state of truth. That's Bodhi, enlightenment. It may be that the truth of Bodhi abounds beyond the universe. And that's as far as I got, but that'll give you a teaser of what I'm working on. And this is just page 2 of a 32-page... Oh gosh, I bent the page. All right. Anyway, this is just page 2 of a 32-page essay by Dogen. And I'm still working on it, still trying to get it together and still trying to write the thing. So I'm in the midst of it. But I thought that might be kind of interesting to people who are interested in this kind of stuff. So there you go. And if you're interested in hearing more of this kind of stuff and supporting me while I keep writing and not making money doing anything else while I'm writing, you can send me money. You can send donations to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my Patreon and PayPal accounts. Those are my main and usually only ways of making a living. Really, pretty much my only way of making a living. And I appreciate your support. But as always, this is offered for free, so you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. We will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye.
Hey, Ziggy. 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 How you doing, Ziggy? You want me to leave you alone and let you sleep and not take a cameo of you? Alright. We'll see you later. I'm going to go edit the video. Bye-bye.